The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with another episode of the Hard Rock Empire on this Sunday, June the 22nd, 2025. We are almost through the month of June, believe it or not, and we are ready to bring you episode number 70 of the Hard Rock Empire. Looking forward to another great week of music, and it was a little bit challenging this week, but overall I think we found 4 pretty good new albums to bring to your attention this week, so we're very much looking forward to that coming up on this episode. Of course, we will bring you the latest news headlines as well, and then we will check out a couple of classic albums in the vault and finally wrap things up with this week's question of the week, which is the Power Trio. Joining me in studio, as always, on this Sunday evening is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. Yeah, definitely a kind of a mixed bag for new releases for this week, but did find a couple pretty good ones, I think, that I certainly could see listening to more of. Kind of also interesting if you like live music. Over the weekend, Hellfest happened, I believe in France. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there from some of the performances, but you had Korn, Muse, Scorpions, Linkin Park, tons of acts like any other major festival, but I saw a couple pop up on my recommendations, so that's always cool to check out.
Yeah, and there are probably several bands that we've talked about pretty regularly on this podcast that probably had sets at that event over the weekend, so definitely check that out. Of course, as we always talk about, support these bands that we talk about, and when we talk about these festivals, try to get out to some of them, and obviously the more we can support live music and live concerts, the better chance that those things are going to be able to continue. We've got some news headlines, and nothing really earth-shattering in this week's news, so we just picked a few that either kind of amused me or might be of some interest to some people who listen to our podcast on a regular basis. And one of the regular topics on this podcast is Frontiers Records, and so we're starting right off with a Frontiers Records-related article that was in Blabbermouth this week, that Frontiers has announced the signing of legendary English rock supergroup Asia for a new chapter in the band's celebrated history. And, we've talked about Asia, I'm sure, before on this podcast. And, it's kind of interesting that this appears to be kind of a second stint with Frontiers for Asia. They were signed to the label a little while ago and now are getting back into Frontiers. And, I mean, I'm not shocked to see that they had previously been in Frontiers, because honestly, I was a little surprised to see this story, because my first thought was, oh, you mean they're not already signed to Frontiers Records? Yeah. But, Asia, really great group from the 70s and 80s, and kind of interesting to see what this partnership ends up bringing for the band.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely can't fault these bands for getting back out there. Someone like Jeff Downs, we talked about stories earlier. Who were we talking about just last week? Yes.
Yeah.
You're talking about bands who don't have original members left. You have Asia reforming with one original member. And like a lot of those Frontiers bands, you see they bring on some newcomer vocalist who apparently sets the world on fire, in Harry Whitley. So I imagine they sound really good. I'm not as familiar with Asia's body of work as I probably should be. Like, I know the singles, like most people do, but kind of looking through their discography, and I got a lot of homework to do, because I definitely want to check it out. I find their weird, naming convention for their albums to be kind of out there, from, the debut self-titled in 1982 to Alpha, Astra, Aqua, Aria, Arena, Rare, Aura. And then they seem to have broken away from that naming convention in 2004. But a lot of albums starting with the letter A. But yeah, definitely something I want to check out more of, and kind of excited to hear they got some live albums, DVDs, and a brand new studio album set for next year.
I'm looking forward to hearing what that's going to sound like. Of course, the singles you mentioned, songs like Heat of the Moment, Only Time Will Tell, Soul Survivor, those were 3 of the big Asia singles. They're a band that I think fits right in with a lot of those other. I mean, you talk about Yes. I mean, I feel like this is another band that fits very much in that same mold. The classic rock, but also progressive rock, and for whatever reason, whether it was just the fact that they didn't want to change their sound or whatever it might be, they continue to release albums into the 80s, but like so many of those groups, they kind of got left behind when the MTV era came about, when music started to change, when, the glam rock kind of came in the late 80s, you didn't really hear as much from Asia at that point.
Well,
And
they're partially to blame for MTV.
that's very true.
Jeff Downs, the original keyboardist of Asia, was in the Buggles, so he actually is part of MTV history.
Video Killed the Radio Star, of course, the first video to air on MTV, which is a horribly mediocre song.
Absolutely, but you mentioned also Yes, and obviously Steve Howe was in Asia as well. Pretty much rock royalty as far as prog music goes. John Wetton, King Crimson, Uriah Heep, Carl Palmer from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, rounding out the lineup of the original lineup of Asia. So kind of crazy.
Yeah, you're 100% on the mark in the fact that I need to catch up on Asia as well, because I feel like that's a band that I need to be more familiar with their discography. Like you said, I mean, maybe for whatever reason don't get the attention that a group like Yes does, and it could just simply be because Yes was able to find a way to have a bit of a renaissance in the modern era when Roundabout kind of hit again. Thanks to its appearance in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, kind of brought Yes to a whole new generation of rock fans, and maybe Asia just needs to hook up and get heat of the moment and involved in some show to bring it back to the forefront. But I'm excited for them. That's great news, and I think whatever they release will sound good. And like I said, a chance for all of us to maybe become more familiar with the great catalog of albums that they have from over the years. So really cool news from Asia, especially if you are a fan of progressive rock. Speaking of progressive bands, I think this is certainly a band that fits the bill. The band Rush, obviously no longer active after the passing of Neil Peart. They hung it up, but their fans obviously continue to celebrate the band. And Rush Fest Canada coming up in Toronto Friday, August 1st and Saturday, August 2nd. It will mark 10 years to the day that Rush played their final concert in Los Angeles on August the 1st, 2015. And again, if you look at the Blabbermouth article that I've posted in chat, this sounds like if you're a Rush fan, this is going to be a blast of a 2-day event. A lot of tribute bands, a lot of events and commemorations and things like that. So I think if you're someone that can get over to Toronto at the beginning of August and you're a fan of the band, I think this is probably already on your calendar, but if it's not, it probably should be.
Yeah, absolutely. The tribute bands and cover bands, that's cool enough to begin with, but they also mentioned that you have like their longtime producer that's going to be in attendance, as well as Hugh Syme, who I've talked about before months ago on the podcast. The album artwork that he has done over his career and the bands that he's worked with, staggering. And the dude is just incredible. But I think it'd be really cool to see any content he provides to this festival and maybe like an art exhibit or something to that effect. But yeah, Terry Brown's the other name. The producer for the first 10 albums. That alone would be really cool. But yeah, you go down the list of all the other acts, a lot to take in, for sure. 2112, tribute band faithful to the Rush spirit. Moving Pictures, an official house band featured at Rush Fest Brazil and Lakeside Park. Like, tons of stuff like that. I think, if I know Rush fans, they're kind of ate up with the band. Anything like this would be a blast.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, it is notable to state, and whether, there would be some sort of appearance or not, but there's no mention of Geddy Lee or Alex Lifeson.
Yeah, and the poster does mention this is a fan event and is not sponsored or endorsed by or authorized by Rush.
Yes.
But it is what it is. It's still a chance to get together with other like-minded people and hear some potentially really good cover bands and just kind of celebrate the band and Neil's life and all that. It can't be a bad thing.
No, not at all. It is important just to make sure that people do understand that it's not necessarily, it is not endorsed by the band, but it would be cool if one or both of those guys could swing by or maybe deliver a message that could play during the event. That's always an option. But again, it's great to see that Rush fans kind of continue on and even 10 years after they've stopped, their fandom is as strong as it's probably ever been, with new fans coming all the time. So definitely encourage you, if you were able to get to Toronto in August, that would be a really cool event to attend. Otherwise, a lot of great merch out there from Rush that you can definitely check out if you're just getting into the band. Definitely encourage you to do that. One other interesting story today, because it's, some names that we've talked about on this podcast before, so kind of seeing them paired together is interesting. An article talking to Anthrax's bassist, Frank Bello. He was actually on Ozzy's Boneyard on Sirius XM recently, and in the interview, he talked about a bunch of different topics, but one that was kind of interesting and certainly was the headline of this article is the fact that he's currently writing music with Living Colour, and in their efforts to release a new album coming up soon. And we got a chance to see Living Colour. They were amazing. The thought of them releasing new music and the thought of someone like Frank Bello having a hand in that new music is really cool. Honestly, it was just kind of cool to hear the collaboration there that, kind of ties those two bands together.
Yeah, absolutely. In the interview, too, he talks about playing with Anthrax at Ozzy's farewell show, and he's also going to be involved in some of the all-star supergroups that are going to perform at that event, so that's really cool. Yeah, it's kind of wild. Like, you don't hear his name nearly as often as some of the other members of Anthrax. I feel like some of the other members are much more out there in the news on a regular basis, whether you have like Charlie Benanti playing with Pantera, Scott Ian just got a new signature Jackson guitar, Joey Belladonna's appearing on the Triumph tribute album. I feel like they're a little more out in the forefront, so it's really cool to see that Frank Bello's out there working with Living Colour of all bands, and I'm sure he mentions that their new music is killer, and he's psyched to be a part of it, and I'm sure it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I can't wait until that comes across our desk at some point, probably early next year if they're still in the process of writing it. But again, as we've said before, definitely check out Living Colour if they come into your area. They're still amazing.
Living Colour and Anthrax are both bands that still bring it. There's
Absolutely.
no question.
Anthrax is a band I could 100% go see again. I've seen them twice, and they were awesome both times. And really, they were the band of the big four that before I saw them I knew the least about and came away the most impressed just having seen their stage show. So really cool news, though. And like you said, a lot of members of Anthrax, kind of doing some different cool projects right now. So that's always great to see as well. So just an interesting story, again, about two bands that we do like to spotlight on this podcast. Just a reminder, check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Of course, you can check out previous episodes of the Nerdcast Empire. We will not be back with you tomorrow. By this time tomorrow, I will be hopefully in a rental car on the way to Atlantic City. Very steamy Atlantic City. I'm not looking forward to some triple-digit temperatures over the couple days I'll be there. But we'll be back, assuming scheduling works out well, we will be back on Friday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time for another episode of the Nerdcast News Report. And then, of course, next Sunday, we'll be back with you for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. We'll be getting into June next week, I guess,
Finally.
month. June 5th, I think, or 6th. I'm not sure which date exactly, but
I'm looking at the wrong month. That doesn't help me. Yeah, the 6th.
it is the 6th. So the
I
month,
can't count days, apparently.
the music of June the 6th will be coming up next week, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. So I hope you'll join us for that on the Nerdcast Empire. It is time to get to our new music segment, and I will go through what I say each and every week when we talk about this. Of course, each and every week, Mike will go through and he will pull the list of all the new releases for a given date. The given date this week is May the 30th, and then he will create a YouTube playlist that basically puts one track from each of those albums that he's able to find in a YouTube playlist. He reviews them all. I review the stuff he deems to be the best of the stuff from the playlist, and then we each choose two new releases and bring them to you on this podcast. Those playlists are now in both of the chats, so if you would like to be able to check out, some of the new music and maybe pick your own favorites, definitely encourage you to do that. This was a week that honestly was a little bit thinner on music. There was a lot of decent stuff out there, but not a ton of amazing stuff. I did see, was it Skid Row had a new album this week?
They had a re-release.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Revolutions Per Minute, I think it was re-released.
Yeah, so that was really the one big name I think I saw on the list this week, unless there was others that I may have missed. But
I can't remember now, to be honest.
That's kind of weak it was, music-wise. It was a little bit thinner on the release side, but, that happens sometimes, especially being that, May was a month that had an extra week, I would have guessed, because of the 30th. So 2, 9, 16, 23, 30. Yeah, so there were 5 weeks in the month of May, so that could explain to some degree maybe why the music of the 30th is a little bit thinner. But and also just a reminder, we will be going through each of the bands we've picked. But of course, if you're listening where you get your podcast, you will not get to hear the audio clips. Hopefully on the VODs of YouTube and Twitch, you'll get to hear the audio clips. But of course, the best place to be is to join us live on Sundays at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. That is the one place you are sure to hear the clips of these bands. And with that said, it is time to get to the new music of May the 30th, 2025. Mike, you will kick us off as you always do. What do you have for pick number 1 this week?
Yeah, just one other note about that Skid Row album,
Yeah.
Revolutions Per Minute. That was their 2006 release. I vaguely remember listening to it when it came out. I don't think it was as good as 2003's Thick Skin.
Okay.
That being said, I feel like I underrated Johnny Solinger as a lead singer, and considering he was on this album as well, maybe it's something I should give another listen to at some point in time, because I feel like his stuff has aged fairly well.
And honestly, the track that was on our playlist I thought was fine.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was decent enough that I wanted to go back. I unfortunately did not obviously look into it far enough to see there was a re-release, but it was fine. So I think, I'd kind of be interested to see what the rest of the album sounds like as well.
Anyway, moving on to the new stuff for this week. My first album is the second full-length album from a Swiss progressive metal band. The band is called DarkFlow, and the album is Imminent End.
Yeah, this is another one off the playlist that I had marked as well for a re-listen. Again, the good stuff was, few and far between this week. So anything that was relatively good, it was definitely getting marked. But I really dug the sound of this group.
Yeah, this one's definitely really cool. They started back in 2017. This is the follow-up to their first full-length album, 2023's Insane Circus. Their Facebook refers to them as the most tense and horrifying band of Switzerland. I don't know who the competition is, but congratulations. That's pretty cool. The band consists of Dr. Trickster on bass, Soa Grimm on drums, Flo on guitars, Sean Horror on vocals, and Meech K on guitars. I put the song Eerily Fading Away on the playlist for this week, and the classic metal guitar at the beginning kind of caught my attention, and then the vocals started, had this kind of a different, clean vocal sound than what I'm used to from music like this. And I thought the less clean vocals actually blended pretty well with it. And then once we got to the chorus, it just made me realize, man, I need to check this out. This is definitely something, while prog, unique. And I'm always for that. Getting into the album, it's produced by longtime King Diamond guitarist Andy LaRocque, which, given this is a horror metal concept album, can't be a bad thing. He also provides a guitar solo on the track The Last Symphony. A review done by Ghost Cult Magazine quotes the lead vocalist Sean Horror saying the album is about the world's end, each track a vision of how everything falls apart. And yeah, looking at the track listing, that holds true. It's got a great blend of vocal styles, spooky sounds, and high quality metal. It's different from a lot of the prog metal I listen to, so I think if you're even tangentially interested in prog or horror or concept albums, it's definitely worth listening to because it's just a little unique. Standout tracks on the album include Among Misery, Draining All Hope, The Last Symphony, and Press the Button. And also the track that I picked to listen to, the song I mentioned earlier, Eerily Fading Away.
Check these guys out. This is DarkFlow with their new album, Imminent End. This is the 4th track off of this album, Eerily Fading Away. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, I think the thing that jumped out at me from the playlist was just the different sound than, like you said, typically bands like that sound different than that band sounded, which I think immediately kind of makes you take notice because you're not expecting that. But I think, like you said, I think the clean vocals really work here. They're a little bit of a different way to go about it, but I feel like it works really well with the music. And like you said, having anybody from King Diamond involved in your album is maybe and could be, that helped in kind of guiding the direction of what that album looks like. But no, the track off the playlist I really enjoyed and definitely need to check out more of this album.
Yeah, it's always kind of refreshing when you have a prog band who their vocalist isn't James LaBrie sounding or Bruce Dickinson, maybe like any of that, like more European metal vocal sensibility. You don't have it here, and I think that's definitely refreshing. And kind of making the comparison again to Dream Theater is the guitars don't feel like John Petrucci chords. Like it feels very rooted in traditional metal with a concept prog twist, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, like I said, I love just them giving you something a little bit different than maybe what you're expecting, and I think that's what made this stand out as one of the outstanding albums of the week. So I definitely check those guys out. Really enjoyed the first pick of the week, DarkFlow. Definitely worth putting on your radar this week. As always, you have 2 picks. What do you have for pick number 2?
Yeah, so we got a fairly new band for pick 2. It's their debut full-length album. They are from Belgium. They are a heavy metal band. They are Divni San, and the album is Dreamlike Tales.
Yeah, this was another one that caught my attention on the playlist this week, and it's always great when you got a newer band that's breaking through, and definitely interested in checking more of these guys out.
Yeah, it seems like it's another one of those bands that in fairly short order have found one of those kind of modern record labels that we hear about every week, in this case being Wormhole Death. But these guys started back in 2021. They released their self-titled EP in 2023. Now they've signed to Wormhole Death, and we have this full-length album released the week we're covering, 2025. The band's made up of Thomas Lorsignol on bass and vocals, Fabrice Deptero on drums, Philippe Meshin on guitars, and Drazen Marek on vocals and guitars. The track on the playlist was the song Ready to Fight. Had this really cool classic metal sound, kind of a unique lyric video style that you don't see every day. It wasn't like your really tacky AI lyric videos that you see more and more of. It had a cool style, and that definitely caught my attention. Their sound has a certain rawness to it, which can be a risky move because I think sometimes when you go that route, it can unnecessarily make your album sound poorly produced or like they're artificially trying to make it sound like it was done in 1980. But I think here it works really well for these guys. Nothing about it sounds bad, just classic, like a throwback in a good way. Just like the first band I mentioned, the vocals here are not really typical for this kind of traditional metal band. I think, again, it gives them a different angle, kind of like the first band, where it doesn't feel like, oh, that's just a new version of this band. It doesn't feel that way. It feels traditional, but different traditional. I mentioned there's another band that's been picked up by Wormhole Death, who are certainly becoming a recurring label that we talk about. The announcement on the signing on Wormhole Death's website makes reference to a CD release, so hopefully there's a physical version of this out there, but I didn't see it on their store as of yet. It's definitely one I'm looking to pick up. It's a quick listen. It's 7 tracks, 34 minutes, and definitely worth listening to the whole thing. If I were to pick some standout tracks, I would go with Ready to Fight, Winter Moon, When the Bell Rings the Knell, and the track that I picked to listen to, the title track, Dreamlike Tales.
Check these guys out. This is Divni San, their new first full-length album, Dreamlike Tales. This is the title track, and it is the opening track off of this album, so let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Leave it all behind. No need to fear the night. Listen to my voice coming from my soul. Dream like tales. Don't forget your prayers. From the father to the son, from the mother to the stone. Dream like tales. Don't forget your prayers. From the father to the son, from the mother to the
One thing that's very evident, especially listening to it with headphones on, is the guitars are very prominent in the mix. Like,
Yeah.
you definitely get that vibe, and I think that comes across very strongly, and you really can hear the quality of it because of how prominent they are in the mix. But yeah, the vocals are a unique style, and it works with the music they're doing, and I think that's, like you said with your first band, a different style of vocal for this type of music, and it because it is so unique, it has its own place, and I think it makes the album more interesting than if it was just some cookie cutter, melodic vocal or some really, really harsh vocal with this. Like, it kind of has its own space, and it makes for a really good listen.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's part of the reason why it didn't feel like poorly produced, is that the guitars sound so good.
Yeah.
Like, you have the vocals kind of in the background, and if the guitars weren't so prominent and actually sound so clean, I think that might be an issue. But yeah, the vocalist is definitely kind of a different sound, and I'm all for that. And hopefully I can get a copy of the CD at some point.
Yeah, at some point, hopefully that'll be an option. But definitely check them out in the meantime. Divni San with their new release, Mike's second pick for this week. As always, I have 2 picks as well, and it was a light week for melodic rock bands. As everybody knows, I tend to steer toward at least one pick in that genre if it is available, and I think there was one melodic rock band on the list, and thankfully, they had a good release, so it was definitely very easy to pick them. My pick is a melodic rock band from right here in the US of A. This is Tragik with the album Crescendo. This band has been around, according to Rock Poser, this is their 13th studio album. And the man that's kind of behind this is Phil Vincent. And I definitely encourage you to check out his website. We'll talk about it in a moment, but he's a very busy man. He's the lead vocalist, also plays rhythm guitar and keyboards. Also in the band is Vince O'Regan on guitars, or Regan, I guess it could be. Damien Dierko on bass, and Dirk Phillips on drums. If you like melodic rock that sounds like it's from the 80s, I think you're going to really enjoy this album. I mentioned Phil Vincent. He's a busy, busy guy. If you go to his website, philvincent.com, and you go to his discography, there are so many albums on there, and that guy must just be constantly writing songs. And I think that's great. Like, you've got these people that are just these musical geniuses that clearly are just constantly inspired and just let's get in and let's write something new and producing music at a high level. And I think that's the best part of it. It's not just rushing out 10 songs and being done with it. Like, these are clearly really good songs he's putting out there. Also is interesting, he must be a master promotion as well, because there was a Reddit thread asking how he's getting so many billboards and TV commercials promoting his music, especially near his home state of Rhode Island. Evidently, there are billboards in Rhode Island with his name or face or album on there, and that kind of got into the depressing world of billboard advertising, which in another lifetime I had more knowledge of billboard advertising, what went into that, and I'm sure it's probably not gotten any better since then. But interesting if you go find that thread on Reddit. There's also, when you go through this album, a lot of really good new stuff, but there's also a good cover of Bachman Turner Overdrive's Giving It All Away on this album, which I really enjoyed. Definitely worth checking out. But overall, really enjoyable album. Standout tracks include Giving It All Away, Ungrateful, Beyond the Moonlight, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast, Phoenix Rising. So let's check these guys out. This is Tragik with their new release, Crescendo. This is the opening track off of that album, Phoenix Rising. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Walking through fire, lighting it up. Getting so high, but you can't get enough. Like a phoenix rising, back from the dead, just a living again. Like a phoenix rising, and you're never gonna die. If there was just one single thought.
Quickly jumping into the next verse there. But, yeah, again, just very solid. It feels like something in between a lot of the melodic rock of the mid-'80s and some of the early glam metal of the late 80s, kind of something in between. There's a little bit of a bluesy feel to them as well. It kind of gives you some, like, Dokken vibes. But overall, really enjoyable. If you're just looking for a great melodic rock album this week, definitely encourage you to check out Tragik. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I've said before that there needs to be more music like this, and we've since found out there is a lot of it. Just we never get to. We don't typically, we wouldn't normally hear it if we didn't actually go and seek it out, and I think more people should. But yeah, just in a week where I felt like I was struggling to find something to latch onto, this was one of the later Alphabet items on the list where I'm like, okay, thank you. I needed this. Good stuff.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and like I said, Phil Vincent probably already halfway through a new album as we speak, already working on the next thing, but really good stuff from Tragik, my first pick of the week. Like Mike said, it was a bit of a challenging week, so, anytime we have these weeks like this, I always like to try to stretch some of the bands that I listen to and maybe get out of the box that I kind of paint for myself as far as genres I really check out. And it led me to a really interesting band that I really enjoyed this EP they released. This is a UK/Greece-based trio. Hilltops Are for Dreamers with their new EP this week, A Soulless Drive. And this is an interesting group because they've got some interesting influences. One review listed their influences: post-hardcore, black metal, progressive rock, and melancholic blues. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. The same review from Elevar magazine noted this EP was a much more clearer focus with a more modern hard rock element to the music. They noted other releases had more harsh vocals. They're still here in the album of the EP, but they're definitely more sporadic. But really, really interesting sound, and it definitely has that modern rock feel. The band is, and I'll try to get this right, the guitarist, bassist, and keyboardist is Vasilis Papageorgakopoulos. Also on drums, we have Fernando Guerrero, and it's Sam Sanasi on vocals. All three tracks really solid. If this album is a shift in direction for this band, it'll be interesting to see what a full-length album from these guys sound like. But this was my kind of intro into this band, and overall, it certainly has made me want to check out more of their stuff as they continue to release new stuff. I definitely want to hear what it sounds like. But overall, if you like kind of the modern rock sound, I think you're going to dig this. It's 3 songs. It's an EP, so definitely listen to them all. But the one we're going to listen to on this podcast is The Oath. So let's check these guys out now. This is Hilltops Are for Dreamers. This is their new EP, Soulless Drive. This is the second track off of that EP, The Oath. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
I'll take an oath to love the heart that's breaking now until the morning. I'll scream out loud. Let's take this oath for the soul that left the crowd. And in the morning, I hope I'm found. I hope I'm found.
I think the one thing that came across in this EP that we've talked about before when you're talking about bands that are, either single person projects or in this case a trio is, how full is the sound when you only have 3 people playing on it. And I think that's something that made this really good, is that they were able to produce such a full sound of rock and metal with just a 3-person band. And I think that certainly is a very encouraging sign. And again, interested to see kind of where they go from here. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, that was wild. Like the chorus, the harmony was amazing, and they even found a way to kind of bring in the harsh vocals into that somehow, which was really cool. Kind of had like 60s rock feel to it.
Yeah.
But then they kick into like this guitar riff that felt more like early 2000s. It's just definitely a unique blend of styles, and I'm sure that's how you arrive there. But yeah, I definitely want to check out more of these guys.
Yeah, and like, again, when you hear the different influences, it totally makes sense because you hear all of them in these 3 songs. But yeah, I'm certainly interested in checking these guys out again. So definitely check out Hilltops Are for Dreamers. Their new EP is out on May the 30th. And that is going to wrap up our new music for this week. It's time to head into the vault, where Mike and I will give you classic albums you need to check out. As we talk about every week, Mike is literally going through his vault and We have gotten past the halfway point. We are headed down the home stretch. We are up to the letter P this week. I'm sure there were several really good options for that. But what did you end up choosing for your vault pick for this week?
Yeah, so the first time around, I picked an album by Poison Black, which I have plenty of others of theirs that I could have gone with. Other potential options: Presidents of the United States of America, classic debut there. Power Man 5000, Tonight the Stars Revolt, another tremendous album. And one of the few bands that were in kind of that new metal movement that I really latched onto. I wasn't a huge new metal guy, but Power Man 5000 I really enjoyed. That being said, what I end up going with is the 6th studio album from a German power metal band. The band is Primal Fear, and the album is 2005's Seven Seals.
Yeah, this is another one of those bands of yours that I know I have heard bits and pieces of their stuff, but I've never really sat down and given them like a really good listen. But I'm relatively certain that I would enjoy their stuff if I get a chance to actually listen to full albums of theirs.
Yeah, I've never really gotten into their history, like where they came from, beyond just being a German power metal band. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. So the band was formed by the former vocalist for Gamma Ray, Ralph Sheepers, who I'm familiar with. I know he's a tremendous singer. He had left Gamma Ray for kind of a twofold reason. I think one, he lived far away from like Kai Hansen and them and kind of felt like the distance was an issue. But also around that time, he unsuccessfully auditioned to be the new lead singer of Judas Priest.
Oh.
Who ultimately went with Tim Ripper Owens for their lead singer spot. But after that, he, Matt Sinner, and Tom Nauman, who have been playing together in a Priest tribute band amongst his other projects, decided to form the band Primal Fear. By 2005, when this album came out, the lineup for the band included Sheepers on vocals, Sinner on bass and backing vocals, Nauman on guitars, Stefan Liebing on guitars and keyboards, and Randy Black on drums. I mentioned before, Ralph Sheepers is just a legendary vocalist. There's no question about it. And now that I know the backstory, it makes it even more obvious that I can hear Rob Halford in his voice. Like, it just seems evident. So not surprising at all that he would jump at a chance to sing for Judas Priest. Makes you kind of wonder what made them go with Owens as their lead singer. I mean, not that either choice would have been bad. They're both great. But it does make you wonder why they went with Tim Owens in that situation. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get to this album, it kind of feels like a more mid-tempo, darker, maybe a bit heavier version of Gamma Ray, which I love Gamma Ray, so I'll gladly take that. It's got some outstanding tracks and really is kind of one of my favorite albums in that power metal genre as a whole. The band's still out there. They'll be releasing their 15th studio album, Domination, after signing with Reigning Phoenix Music, another big label we talk about pretty frequently. The lineup currently includes Sheepers on vocals, Sinner still on bass and vocals, Magnus Carlsen, who joined back in 2008 on guitars, and then a couple newcomers, Talia Belazeka on guitars since 2024, and Andre Hilgers on drums since 2024. Mentioning Magnus Carlsen, he's another guy who's just a legend in the industry, having worked with so many artists and being the creative force behind the Alan Land albums, which were amazing. So, any of their more modern albums, I'm sure I would love as well, just knowing that between Sheepers, Sinners, and Carlsen, you got such talented people behind the scenes. Standout tracks on this album, though, include Demons and Angels, Roller Coaster, Seven Seals, Evil Spell, All for One, and In Memory. If you're just looking for great power metal, look no further. This is an awesome album.
Yeah, when you just mention the people that are involved in this, it can't not be good. Like, it's got to be amazing because just power metal royalty involved with this, and obviously Sheepers is amazing, and it's I'm definitely interested to see how he continues to sound with their new album coming out later in the year. And Magnus Carlsen, that guy is another guy that comes up about once a month on this podcast. He's either involved in something new, or we have a story about something he's doing, or we talk about an old album that he had a hand in. Like, the guy is an absolute legend of the business, and if you want to have a successful power metal, melodic metal, just metal album, you should probably get him involved somehow, even if he's just like mixing it or just producing it or just giving you ideas. He probably should be in there. But yeah, I really want to check these guys out. Again, too many good people involved in this band for it not to be amazing. So I definitely want to give this a listen.
It's kind of crazy to think that many years into their career, because I mean, this album came out in 2005 before Carlson was involved, but it's like the band had been around since the mid '90s, and then in 2008 they just get this injection of adrenaline that's Magnus Carlson. Like that can't be negative in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, I mean, great album. I need to listen to more of their stuff, like so many of these bands, but this one's right up there.
Yeah, definitely check those guys out. Primal Fear, again, still active, and we will certainly be talking about them coming up probably late September, early October when we get around to reviewing the music of September the 5th, I believe is the release date on that. So definitely tune in for that, but definitely we're checking out some of their old stuff as well here on The Vault. I am continuing through Frontiers Records Vault, and we are up for the second week in a row on the letter G. This week was the randomizer pick of the letter G, and stumbled into a band I probably would not have found otherwise going through here, but this is the Giuntini Project, and this is their album Giuntini Project 3. That would be the Roman numeral 3. This is an Italian rock band started in 1988 by guitarist Aldo Giuntini. What a surprise. It's a Frontiers band that has some sort of a guitar virtuoso as the staple of it. There have been 5 albums. 4 of them were released under that name, and then in 2020, he changed the name of the band to the Giuntini Deathline, and they released Giuntini Deathline 5, the letter Roman numeral V. So that was the change to the band. On this album, released by Frontiers in 2006, in addition to Giuntini on guitars, the album featured former Black Sabbath singer Tony Martin on vocals. Also included Fulvio Gasolini on bass, Ezio Seccomandi on drums, Dario Patti on keyboards, and Fabiano Rizzi on drums. And he also played on drums on Memories in the Sand, just that one track. Dario Molo, who has worked with Martin and Glenn Hughes over the years, produced, engineered, and mastered the album. So, it sounds really, really good. With a change to Giuntini Deathline in 2020, he basically got a whole new band. So he's the only one left, Giuntini, including Eric Castiglia on vocals. Overall, this album is really good. Makes me want to check out the rest of their stuff. It's just a really solid melodic rock band, or melodic rock album from Frontiers. The album also includes a cover of Anno Mundi, The Vision. Of course, Tony Martin sang that while he was with Black Sabbath, so kind of fitting you're covering yourself. But they did a really good job with the cover. I think people will enjoy that. Standout tracks include Gold Digger, Not Connected, KS La Vida, and Anno Mundi, The Vision. Again, this is a band I never probably would have listened to this album had I not found it through this vault. It's not even a band I've really ever heard of, but they're still around, and maybe we'll get a 6th album from his new project, and we'll be able to check it out. But really cool stuff from these guys. So, again, it's just another example of Frontiers just putting together these groups and making magic with them.
I would love to know the sales on some of these, because they have so many projects like this and bands like this that even someone like me, who over the years has had kind of probably more interest in that kind of music than the average person. I mean, maybe they do really well in Italy and in Europe, but I would love to see some numbers. I'm just curious.
And it's like, if you know nothing else about that group, you see Tony Martin involved and just think,
yeah,
well, he's great. And it was. I mean, you listen to his vocals and it's just like, well, this is great.
Yeah.
Like, that seems to be the Frontiers method, where it's either you take a band of maybe not well-known musicians and you put 1 or 2 really well-known musicians with them, or a well-known singer, or vice versa. You take, we just talked about with Asia in our opening segment, where you take a band full of legends and here's this brand new lead singer. We're going to, you've never heard of him, but he's amazing, and we're going to put him with your group, and you're going to get this new injection of life that way. They have found a way with both sides of the formula to just continue to produce amazing music. And again, if not for this podcast, most of these bands I either wouldn't have never heard of or probably would have never gone back and listened to their stuff. So it's been great to hear.
Yeah.
But good stuff. Definitely check out Giuntini Project. I had to find the album on YouTube as a file. I did not see it on YouTube Music, so your mileage may vary as far as trying to find these albums, but it's definitely worth the effort because it was really good stuff. So that is our trip into the vault for this week. It is time to get to the Power Trio, your hard rock hat trick. And this week, it's going to be summer. I mentioned it's going to be hot this week. So I thought, it's time for your summer road trip. And, of course, if you're going to go on a summer road trip, you got to have a soundtrack for your summer road trip. Got to have the music. You got it all lined up. And, those of us of a certain age, that meant, putting together a playlist and getting your CDRs and burning a new CDR for the trip and getting ready to rock out. Nowadays that's not necessary, but, still, you got to have the road trip playlist, and that is what the question is of the week. What is your top 3 hard rock, heavy metal songs on your road trip playlist? And I believe I saw some answers from Chris in the chat. Did we get anything from Shane this week?
Yeah, we have both Chris and Shane responses.
All right, let's talk about Shane. What did Shane have to say about his hard rock road trip?
I think you're always afraid with a topic like this, there's going to be overlap because there are kind of the obvious songs.
Yeah.
I really like his picks, but I wouldn't have. There's really only one of them that I might have thought about, only because it's come up in topics, not as a pick, but it's been mentioned lately.
Okay.
Anyway, his first pick is actually a band I wasn't familiar with. It's from a Turkish symphonic metal band. The band is Dream Ocean, and the song is a cover of Phantom of the Opera.
That's interesting.
I'm more familiar with the Nightwish cover of it, which is tremendous. This one is just as good, but it's such an obvious, if you want to do symphonic music but make it metal, pick that song. If you have the female vocal that has kind of the operatic thing going on, you can nail it, and they did. It's a really cool song.
All right, that's definitely not one I was thinking of, but a really good choice.
Now let's do a total 180 from that sound, and we are going to go with the Proclaimers, and I'm going to be 500 Miles from their 1988 album Sunshine on Leith.
I mean, again, it's one of those ones that I would have probably put on a list, but I was sure somebody might say it. But it's a classic for sure.
It's a great song. I don't know if it would be on my road trip playlist, but it is just an outstanding song. So different than anything I normally listen to.
Yeah, I think the one thing I was thinking of with this list is singability. And to me, that song has the sing along ability to it. So if you're in a car and you're with somebody of a similar age and they both know this song, you can kind of rock out to that song. So, yeah, it may not be front of mind, but for that reason, I can see its inclusion.
And if sing-along ability is what you were going with, I assume Shane was probably in that same mindset because his number 3 pick is from the legendary Bonnie Tyler, the song Holding Out for a Hero from her 1986 album Secret Dreams and Forbidden Fire, as well as the 1984 soundtrack to the film Footloose.
If we can get a clip of Shane singing that, we'll put it on the podcast. And you talk about pop songs of that era and singability. That's got to be right near the top of the list.
Bonnie Tyler, legend.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe underrated, honestly. I think
probably.
I feel like as far as vocalists of that time and artists, I feel like for whatever reason she kind of falls through the cracks, and that's a shame because she's amazing.
Yeah.
So. Interesting stuff. What did Chris have for us this week?
I should also mention Shane did have an honorable mention pick. We kind of got on the topic of Gwar, and he threw out the song Cool Place to Park off their 1990 album Scumdogs of the Universe. I was going to go a different direction with Gwar, which we'll get into later, but yeah, still a classic.
Okay, fair enough.
Moving on to Chris, his number 1 pick. Definitely a sing-alongable song as well. Judas Priest, You Got Another Thing Coming.
Yeah, that's definitely one that you could sing along with.
A lot of Priest songs that would make good road trip music, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anything where there's a natural crowd participation, I think that also vibes with a road trip song.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. His number 2 pick, another band that has several songs that I could easily listen to on a road trip soundtrack. The band is Boston, and the song is Foreplay/Long Time.
Yeah, that's a good one. And again, a band that you could definitely pick probably a whole album to take on the road with you. But
great band, great sound.
Yeah, for sure.
Number 3, another band kind of that same era that was classic and would have a lot of potential road trip songs. REO Speedwagon with Riding the Storm Out.
Now it's interesting because and this is a long story to go around to getting to this point, but this is I mentioned I was getting ready to go on the road, and I was going to use an REO Speedwagon song, "Back on the Road Again."
Oh, that's a
and
good one
it's
too, yeah.
That is one of the songs obviously Kevin Cronin doesn't sing lead on, and "Riding the Storm Out" is another one, and I guarantee you most people don't know that because the only song you hear on terrestrial radio is the live version of that song. But as it turns out, and I looked this up because I was curious, he had a falling out of the band in the mid-'70s and left the band right before they did the album that had "Riding the Storm Out" on it. So their new lead singer sang that song, which you can find a version of out there. It's a little harder to find. It's fine. But then when Cronin returned to the band and they ended up doing a live album a few years later, they basically made that the single for that song. And now if you listen to it on the radio, it is always the live version that you hear. It's not the original studio album version.
That's interesting because not really being super familiar with their history, I just would have assumed that song
Predated.
was done, predating Kevin Cronin. I didn't realize that he bailed and came back.
I didn't either. That was news to me when I read that on Wikipedia today. But Back on the Road Again is a different case. He was with the band, but one of the other guys in the band sang that song. I mean, that was the only song off the album that guy sang. And when you hear it, obviously it doesn't sound like Kevin Cronin. Sounds different, but it's a good song as well.
And to your point, like, my introduction to REO Speedwagon was from their Greatest Hits album, and it contains the live version of "Riding the Storm Out."
Yeah, so I think a lot of people might not know that, and it's definitely worth finding the original version and checking it out because it is good. It's just different because it's obviously not Kevin Cronin. But yeah, interesting stuff. Great picks from Chris. I think those are all really solid.
Yeah, for sure.
Time to get to your picks for the Power Trio for this week.
Yeah, so this was one of those ones that you can't help but pick some of the obvious ones. I think when you think of something you're going to listen to on the road, like, it just lends to hits sometimes and not the obscure stuff. So for me, my number one, which I know we've talked about before between either my picks or Shane's picks, Stan Bush's song "Dare" from the Transformers soundtrack.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's another soundtrack that you could basically pop in and listen to on the whole road trip and you'd be in pretty good shape.
Like, maybe it's just me, but something about when that first chorus picks up just makes you want to floor it.
It's not. You make sure you're not in an area where you might get a speeding ticket when you're listening to that song.
Yeah, I remember years ago, back in like the high school days, of like having to go pick up Dave to go places because he couldn't drive for whatever reason at that point in time, and you're out on like the country roads going out to Bufu where he lived, and yeah, I mean, I would have that song going, and the second "Dare" would pick up, you go nuts. And great song.
Yeah, for sure.
Another super obvious one, Sammy Hagar, "I Can't Drive 55."
Yeah, for sure. Like, again, could have easily picked that one. That's just a logical driving song.
So good.
Another one about speeding. So
yeah, there's not necessarily a theme here, but it definitely, it's the first one that comes to your mind pretty much. Number three is kind of a band that it's not surprising I pick, but this song might be a little less likely just because it's not a hit of theirs. Megadeth's song "Have Cool Will Travel" from their 1997 album Cryptic Writings. It just, something about the melody to it just makes me think, driving somewhere.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool stuff.
That is an interesting choice. Not necessarily one I would have immediately thought of with Megadeth, but that definitely works as well for a driving song. I have three picks as well, and the first one is a song that I know I have a video somewhere in my footage, all the videos that we've shot over the years. I have a video of you and I singing this song driving to Baltimore for, I think it was our first Otakon. This is "The Reflex" by Duran Duran.
Oh, man.
Like,
Duran Duran's so good.
Duran Duran is so good. I think we had their greatest hits, and I think that's what we were listening to, and there were a lot of really good choices on that album. But "The Reflex" is definitely up there. Journey, but not necessarily maybe a Journey song people would think. "Stone in Love."
Okay.
Doesn't sound like a rockin' song, but it is kind of an upbeat song. But definitely one that I've always enjoyed kind of singing along with on the way.
I might go with like "Ask the Lonely."
That's a great one as well.
Yeah,
That's definitely a good
chorus.
choice. And I wanted to throw one Sonata Arctica in there, so I went with "The Wolves Die Young." That guy really kind of kicks it off.
Yeah.
Like, just got a great sound, very sing-alongable as well. But again, there's so many great choices, and again, a lot of obvious ones that you easily. Obviously, nobody picked "Life Is a Highway."
I refused. There was a time back in college when, for whatever reason, Todd had his computer like on lockdown, and I think he was downloading "Life Is a Highway," and like the app that the program he was using to download it would just play however much of it was downloaded and then restart it. And his roommate was trying to sleep and obviously couldn't do anything about Todd's like fortress of a computer, so it just kept going over and over again.
Oh, it's
so
classic.
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, Sonata Arctica. Like, I think that's a good choice. I would think something like Blank File, Web Allergy, Cinder Blocks.
Cinder Blocks.
Just, travel-y about that.
My Celine is another one. Like, it's got a great driving like guitar part to it that would be great to drive. I mean, the verses are a little slower, but like the in between is a little bit harder.
I feel like there's a spin-off category to this that isn't necessarily like road trip songs, but they're like the more not the like high tempo type songs, more like the contemplative, like you're driving home like after a night of work and you don't want something heavy, you want something more like mellow. I feel like there's something like that out there
it's like
too.
1979 by
something like that.
That's one I always think about. Anytime it comes on, it's like extra, emo, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. Like
when I finished walking today up at the high school, I was flipping satellite radio channels, and Paula Cole's "I Don't Want to Wait" came on, and I listened to it on the entire way home. I just thought, like, how like appropriate is it for me to be leaving the high school and this song being playing? Like, I feel like that just took me right back to the late '90s. I'm not necessarily a fan of the song, but it just felt right.
Is that the song that Peter Griffin like?
A new Toyota.
Yes. I feel like now that I hear that song, that is now my first memory of that song is them doing the Dawson's Creek parody on Family Guy with
a new Toyota. Want the one's got a lot of gas.
And now that's all I think of when I hear that song. But you're right, there are definitely, and I think maybe that's a future topic. Maybe next week are what are rock and metal songs that immediately take you back to high school? And I think that is definitely a category because there are some, or college, something like that takes you back to that moment in time that immediately kind of snaps back in. So lots of good stuff. And again, I've got the link to the Discord in both chats. Join the Discord. Tell us what your 3 road trip songs are. Hopefully you're getting ready to head out on the road with 4th of July. If you're listening from Canada, you got Canada Day coming up next week as well. So let us know where you're headed this summer and what songs are going to be accompanying you there and what you think of our picks for the road trip songs on the Power Trio. But it is time to bring this episode of the Hard Rock Empire to a close. A big thanks to everyone for joining us. Big thanks to Chris for dropping his answers in the chat. Big thanks to Mike for all his work on this podcast. And, of course, a big thanks to you whenever and wherever you are listening to this podcast. Reminder, we will not be with you tomorrow. We'll be back with you hopefully on Friday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire, the Nerdcast News Report. And we just had an episode last Friday. Has done very well on YouTube, so thank you to everybody who's checked it out. You can definitely go check that out on demand. And, of course, all of our stuff's archived on YouTube. That's a great place to catch up on the VODs for this podcast. And, of course, we'll be back again 1 week from tonight. That'll be 7 o'clock Eastern Time next Sunday. And we'll be bringing you another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. And it'll be the music of June the 6th coming up next week. So make sure you check that out. Hopefully it'll be a good week of music once again. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast. We'll be back with you again later in the week for another episode of the Nerdcast Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.